Okay, so if you are an adjuster in a property department, like homeowners property department, you are going to deal with lead and asbestos on a regular basis. So let's talk about it.
You in the past, I'm in the future. You mad, they don't salute you. I need
Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you're new here, my name is Keela Trishan and I make videos on lifestyle, insurance, and mental health. I also do vlogs, day in the life in the insurance industry, day in the life with a toddler, all the things. So if that's something that interests you, go on ahead and click that subscribe button below. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss anything from me. And if you're returning, thank you so much for coming back and thank you for your support. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about lead and asbestos. I think that for new adjusters, this can be kind of tricky to deal with because it's like, okay, if we send out testing, if it comes back positive, what do we do? If it comes back negative, what do we do? So I'm going to kind of give you like a lead and asbestos one-on-one type training to kind of guide you in that process, let you know like what you need to do, the steps you need to take. And yeah, if you're interested and if this is a point of contention for you in your adjusting career, definitely go on ahead and stay tuned. In the simplest terms, lead and asbestos were used in production of like drywall, certain flooring, stucco, roofing materials, etc. back in the day. These days, because we know that it can cause cancer, if you're exposed to it long term, there is a way that it needs to be removed if it's determined to be present in any materials. So I just wanted to kind of let you know what that is and why it's so important that we treat it a certain way so there's no issues down the line. Okay, so I think the easiest way for me to kind of talk about this topic is to speak about it in claims terms. So let's say you have a water loss and you have damage to drywall and you have damage to flooring. You know that the emergency services vendor is going to have to cut into these items. So before they cut into these items, the material is going to have to be tested. So typically you can order the testing as an adjuster, or you can have the vendor that you're using order the testing. It's going to be an environmental company that's going to come in. That emergency services company is going to let them know, hey, we need to cut this drywall over here in the kitchen, for example, and we need to cut this vinyl flooring. So the idea is to test to see if there are any issues before you cut into it, because once you cut into it and if it's not done properly, it could contaminate the air around the home. It can be hazardous to the employees that are cutting that material, and it can also be hazardous to the people that live in the home. So it's important to just kind of make sure before anything is cut into, we test it to see if there are any concerns, and then at that point we decide how we're going to deal with it. Now, I live in the state of California, and this is a requirement for us. So most vendors are they're not going to cut into anything without testing it. You do have some vendors that will cut into it, and I'll kind of get into the ramifications with that in a second. But most vendors are going to, say, hey, okay, now that we know we need to cut this material, we're going to have to test it. So that's going to be a given for most vendors in the state of California. So yeah, make sure that you're testing first, like once you know that materials need to be removed, have that taken care of so then you can know what the next steps are going to be. And I'll explain that in a second. Okay, so after the materials are tested, it typically takes anywhere from like 24 to 48 hours to get the results back. The results are going to be sent to the emergency services vendor and or the adjuster. And at that point, then you can decide how you need to move forward. So if the materials come back negative for lead and asbestos, and it's important to remember, sometimes it can come back positive for one, negative for the other. It can come back positive for both, or it can come back negative for both. If everything is negative, then the emergency services company can basically move forward as needed. So because they know now that there is no lead and asbestos, they can go ahead and cut into the materials. They have their employees go out to do with the demolition. So they'll remove whatever drywall needs to be removed, whatever flooring needs to be removed, and they'll typically wrap it up with like some type of plastic or just seal it off so it's not just completely exposed before the insured moves towards repairs. Now, I've seen it in some cases where they just leave it open, but they'll typically just like clean up the dust, just, so you're not breathing in that dust. But the emergency services company is well within their right to remove those materials as long as everything is negative. You can just kind of move forward as normal with no special procedure. Okay, so now what happens if the results come back positive? So it's important to understand that even if one of the materials, if one of the materials come back positive, so if lead comes back positive and it's negative asbestos or vice versa, you're going to have to move forward to what's called an abatement. So an abatement is basically, just in layman's terms, it just means that a special environmental company is going to have to come out and remove the affected materials under containment so it doesn't contaminate the rest of the home. Also, it's safer for the employees. So typically you're going to see these vendors come out with like full PPE. That's the protective wear that they, put on when they're removing like contaminated materials. So they're going to have on like a special like breathing apparatus. They might have on like a special suit, gloves, obviously, to make sure that they're safe when they're removing this material. So what I typically do, I like to control this portion of the claim as much as I can because I like to be in control of my claim. Now, however your procedures go with with your job, you follow those procedures. But for me, once I find out that there is some type of contaminant, I usually will reach out to an abatement vendor and I'll CC the emergency services company. The only time I allow the emergency services company to do this on my behalf is if they're using a vendor that my company works with. It just makes things easier, makes it more streamlined, it lessens the questions that I have to answer and all of that, as long as we're using a vendor on our approved list. But basically, if the materials come back positive, what you'll want to do is reach out to an abatement vendor. You send them a copy of the testing report so they can see what areas need to be removed. So they're essentially going to step in for the emergency services vendor and remove these materials under containment. So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll go out, they'll reach out to the customer and they will set up an inspection so they can create an abatement estimate. A lot of times the customer is okay with going with your vendor to do whatever abatement needs to be done. So you can just go ahead and move forward that way. Or sometimes they might want to use their own vendor or whatever. So payment kind of depends on, your company and then how you do things. But if I'm in a situation where the customer is using our vendors, I'll just allow the abatement vendor to do their thing. Once everything is done, they send me an invoice and I'll pay the vendor directly as long as we have a direct pay authorization. But a lot of times too, if they're going to be using if they're going to be using their own vendor, you can pay them based on your abatement vendor's estimate so they can make sure that they get the work done. It's important though to let your customer know that it needs to be done under containment and they want to get someone that is licensed to do this work, because it could affect their coverage if they don't do it properly. And the insurance company may not be responsible for any issues that happen, if they don't remove these items under containment. Sometimes people don't take it seriously and they're like, oh, well, okay, I'll just have Joe Schmo remove, this material. It's like, you can do that. You can use whoever you want to use to remove the affected material. But at the end of the day, you want to do it correctly. Just for like health reasons. And so there's not any issues moving forward with like the coverage. So yeah, get you an abatement vendor out if things are positive, and then just have them prepare an estimate for you so you know what the cost will be to remove that material under containment. All right, so let's talk about a procedure 5. What is a procedure 5? So this is something that'll happen if the materials that contain lead and asbestos, like if they were cut into before testing, right? And it's later determined that these materials have lead and asbestos. Basically everything in the vicinity of this cut could be affected. So we're now talking about contents and things like that. So there's additional procedure that needs to take place in order to make sure that the home is habitable and the home is not contaminated. So a lot of times what that'll entail is soft goods that are in the way. So think of like your couch, your bed, chairs, things like that, anything that has fabric. Those items could potentially be affected because they were exposed to the contaminant. So sometimes they will be deemed a total loss. If you have hard goods, so like, your dresser, your tables, things like that, these are items that could be wiped clean with a special solution and they'll still be good to go. But anything that's a soft good, anything that's porous will typically be considered a total loss. So it adds another element to the claim, and it's something that will be recommended by the company if they feel that things were contaminated. So what I typically do, and it all depends on the situation, this is just based on my experience, but you would want to check with your particular carrier to, see if they allow this. So if the materials come back positive, before they were tested and, somebody made an access hole, a lot of times this will be a plumber that cut into drywall to stop a leak. Or sometimes even the customer will cut into their drywall. Like if they're trying to, stop whatever damage is, sometimes they'll unknowingly cut into the materials, not realizing that it's contaminated. So if this happens, one thing you can do is a point count. So you can ask the testing vendor to do a point count. Essentially what they're doing is they're testing the environment to see if there is a reason to be concerned and if we need to move forward with the procedure 5. if we need to total loss all of the contents, things like that. So you can have them do that, and if that point count comes back negative, then that's a good thing. You don't have to move forward with the procedure 5. But if it comes back positive, then you are likely going to be on the hook for procedure 5. So it's a little more expensive, obviously, because they now have to put together a procedure 5 report, just explaining what they recommend be disposed of and then what they recommend be cleaned. So typically, if this happens, I'm getting my manager involved just so they know what's going on. I would recommend this, especially if you're a new adjuster, because again, every company is different and the way they handle these things are different. So as soon as you know that a procedure 5 is a possibility, you want to involve management just so they can give you guidance. Even if you don't have to come to them all the time, if this is your first time getting a procedure 5, I would recommend reaching out to management, training department, or something like that, just to make sure that you are handling the claim how they expect you to handle the claim. So it can be scary for a new adjuster because it's like, oh my God, what does this mean? But it's really just, again, it's just another procedure. If the testing comes back positive and you're in a situation where there's possible additional contaminants, you want to make sure that this is documented and taken care of so there's no recourse against the insurance company or the vendor. Now, what I will say is I've had situations where we've done a procedure 5 and it's recommended that all the porous materials are disposed of. You have some customers that are like, oh, this is sentimental, I don't want to get rid of this, or oh, what if I just wash it, whatever. It's important to understand we can make the recommendation based on guidelines, but at the end of the day, it is the customer's decision if they want to dispose of their items or if they want to keep it and take their chances. So a lot of times what will happen with that is the vendor that would be disposing of the items would typically provide the customer with a document to sign saying, I understand the risk, I'm choosing to keep my items. And then typically the insurance company would send out a letter too, just saying, okay, look, we informed you of the ramifications of keeping these items or whatever. If you choose to move forward with it, the insurance company may not be responsible for any ramifications after. So it's important to protect yourself. If you have a customer that wants to keep their items, it's not really your decision to make, it's just it's your duty to inform them and then let them make the best decision for their item. So yeah, procedure 5, nothing to be scared of. It's just, again, another procedure if we determine that the items in the area have been exposed to lead or asbestos. Okay, so one thing that I did want to touch on that comes up sometimes is when a customer is doing work on their home. Let's say that they're doing a remodel or something like that. Sometimes they will, if they have a vendor that is testing for these materials and they determine that there is lead or asbestos in the material, the customer will try to file a claim for the insurance company to assist them with abatement. Now, it's important to understand that for most insurance policies, and I'm saying most because I haven't read every insurance policy, but all the ones that I've read say specifically that having lead and asbestos alone in your home without an actual covered claim is not going to trigger coverage. So the insurance policy is not going to cover you abating these materials unless there is a covered claim. So lead and asbestos are something that the insurance company will assist you with abating if there is a covered cause of loss. So like the example that I used earlier, if there is a pipe leak and, because of this pipe leak, we're going to have to remove some of your drywall or we're going to have to remove some of your flooring, we're going to have to test, we're required to do that. And your policy will cover abatement of those areas because it's a part of the claim. Now, the insurance company is not going to just go cutting into other walls or sending out an abatement vendor to assist you with other rooms in the house that aren't affected. This is where the maintenance kind of comes in at. And if that's something that you want to do or something that you're going to have to do, because of a remodel, that's going to be an expense that you're going to have to, pay for on your own out of pocket. The insurance company is not going to cover the cost of abating pollutants if there is no covered claim attached. So I just want to make that clear because that can be confusing for people. It's like, okay, you covered it in this instance, but you don't cover it otherwise. Like, yes, just because you found out that you have lead and asbestos, that's not a claim issue. The claim or the policy is created to cover like sudden accidental damages. Now that is something that the insurance company will absorb because these materials need to be removed, and in order for them to be removed, they need to be removed under containment if they have those contaminants. So we'll take care of that. But outside of that, again, if you just need the materials removed because you're remodeling or you found out that it's there and now you're scared, that's a cost you're gonna have to eat if you choose to move forward with it. All right, you guys, so that is all I have for you today. I know that I kind of went through this a little bit quickly, but again, I just wanted to kind of give a crash course and just explain it in layman's terms because I know it can be just a lot, for a new adjuster to kind of understand. I know it was a lot for me because it was explained to me, but then I kind of had to go through the process a few times to really understand what was happening. So if you have any questions that I did not answer in this video, feel free to leave me a comment below and I'd be happy to clarify anything that you don't understand. If you have a specific situation where you just kind of, need to know how to handle it, feel free to put that in the comments, or you can shoot me an email at keelatbusiness@gmail.com. I'd be happy to help and just kind of walk you through what I can. Also understand if you send me an email, especially like during the week, I am working full time, so it might take me a couple of days to get back to you, but I definitely will get back to you as soon as I have a free moment. So if you learned something, if you made it this far, definitely go on ahead and click the thumbs up. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you made it this far and have not subscribed, please go on ahead and click that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss anything from me. And with that being said, you guys have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.
You mad, they don't salute you. I need a bag, size is super. They turned your bag, it's like I never knew you. Leave that.